Hi there, thank you so much for joining for today's IEW training. I hope this presentation is useful and helpful to set you up for success as we begin our English 6, 7, and 8 courses this fall. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mrs. Skinner. I've lived in Bozeman the last 8 years, and I graduated from Montana State University with my bachelor's degree in elementary education, along with my minor in K through 8 reading teaching. Pictured below, you will see my precious family. There's my husband, Anthony John, who I've had the joy and privilege of being married to for the last 5 years. And then also my daughter, Isla Jane, pictured below as well. She is 17 months old, and we are just entering into the thick of toddlerhood. In my spare time, I really love being outside, hiking, and enjoying God's beautiful creation, and I also really love repurposing and refinishing old furniture. So a couple goals of this training. Number one, I want you guys to walk away really understanding the purpose of why we use IEW, the Institute for Excellence in Writing curriculum, and also why we use Fix-It Grammar in that curriculum. Secondly, I want you to understand the process of how we are going to use both of these curriculums in the classroom so that you feel competent and equipped as both a parent and a student. And then thirdly, I want to show you how to submit assignments, specifically via Google Docs, so that you will feel equipped for this course as well. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out and raise your hand, and I'd be more than happy to help you. So first off, why IEW? Why are we using IEW in this course? So IEW is unique in the fact that it provides structure for students in order to help them develop confidence in the writing process, but it also gradually guides them towards greater independence and creativity. They will learn different structural models such as note-taking, writing paragraphs, stories, simple reports, writing from pictures, research reports, creative writing, essays, and critiques, and it will really help them to organize any type of composition they go on to write in life. Additionally, stylistic techniques such as strong verbs, quality adjectives, sentence openers, and more are taught in order to help gently move students from the basics into more sophisticated writing. And right below, you can go ahead and see a review from a middle school mom. And these were her words that I just really appreciated. It said, IEW is a winner for reluctant writers and those who can write copious amounts with no structure. I've used this for several years and love the simple one-step-at-a-time approach to improving your students' writing. So really, the reason I chose IEW and am continuing to implement IEW in these courses is because it makes writing simple, but it also helps students, it provides enough structure so that students feel competent in order to write really any type of composition that they are asked to. So all writing assignments, whether we're doing research reports, creative writing, essays, etc., will all follow this same format. So first off, students will be asked to create a keyword outline. This is to help them really just gather their thoughts before they start writing. Secondly, they will be asked to verbally share their keyword outline just to really help. Verbal processing really helps in the writing process as well, just to really solidify the content in their minds. Thirdly, students will be asked to create a rough draft. Then they will be asked to revise or edit this draft. And finally, students will be asked to compose their final draft. So like I said, no matter their writing assignment, all 5 of these steps will take place. They might vary in some degree. For example, some writing assignments we might only do 1 round of revision and editing, while other assignments we may do 2. So here's an example of the process of how we would go about creating a keyword outline. So let's say students were asked to write a report on the history of the new year, and they were given this article down below. So in creating a keyword outline, the first step students must do is they must read the article. Then they would go ahead and they would highlight 3 keywords in each sentence, and then they would write those 3 keywords down in their keyword outline below. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with my topic sentence, celebrating the new year. This one is fairly simple because there are only 4 words. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick celebrating and new year as my 3 keywords for this title. Next, I'm going to go ahead and move on to sentence 1. And notice that each number pertains to each sentence in the paragraph. So there are 7 sentences in this paragraph, and there are 7 lines as well. For this example, we're only going to be going ahead and doing the first 3 sentences. So let's read the first one together. It says, the celebration of the new year is the oldest of all holidays. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I would highlight 3 key words. And if I had a hard copy, I would highlight these with a highlighter. And then I'm going to go ahead and write those 3 keywords down. So the 3 keywords I notice in this sentence are New Year, oldest, and holidays. Now please keep in mind that keywords may differ for each student. So though New Year, oldest, and holidays were the 3 keywords that stood out in my mind, another student might choose celebration, New Year, and holidays. So it can vary for each student, and that is okay. The biggest thing is that we don't want to choose articles as our keywords. We really want to choose words that are helping substantiate the sentence and really getting the point across. Please keep in mind that proper nouns also only count as 1 word. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to sentence 2. It was first observed in ancient Babylon nearly 4,000 years ago. So the 3 keywords that stand out in my mind are the following: observed, ancient Babylon, 4,000. Now I'm going to go ahead and keep continuing this process with all the sentences. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to sentence 3. It says, around 2000 BC, the Babylonian New Year began with the first new moon after the first day of spring to celebrate rebirth, planting of new crops, and blossoming. So the 3 words that stand out in my mind when I read this sentence is 2000 BC, new moon, and rebirth. So now that I have my keyword outline, like I said, if this were a real assignment, we would continue on with all the sentences, but for today's purposes, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next step. So now that I have my keyword outline, I would go ahead and I would cover up the article so that all I'm left with is my keywords. Now I want to verbally create sentences using only these keywords. So my first Roman numeral is 1, indicating that that is my title of my topic. So I might go ahead and just leave this as celebration of the new year. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at sentence 1, New Year, oldest, holidays. I have to think to myself, what is a sentence I could develop using these 3 keywords? So I might say, did you know that the new year is one of the oldest holidays celebrated today? Then I move on to sentence 2, observed ancient Babylon 4,000. I might create something along the lines of, in ancient Babylon, the new year was first observed nearly 4,000 years ago. And then lastly, moving on to my last sentence, 2000 BC, new moon, rebirth. I have to think to myself, what was the purpose of the new moon and the rebirth? And I might create a sentence like the following. Around 2000 BC, this ancient new year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. So now that I've verbalized my keyword outline, I'm going to go ahead and create my first rough draft. So in order to do that, I would go ahead and log into my Gmail account. I would go to my Google Drive. Taking a little bit to load here. I go ahead and press New, and then Google Docs. So for my first rough draft, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type out the sentences that I just verbally shared. And keep in mind that these steps will most likely be done at home on all writing assignments. So a student should be verbally sharing with their parent to create their keyword outline. A student should be verbally sharing their keyword outline to create sentences, and then the student should be typing these sentences into a Google Doc. So I went ahead and typed up my sentences. So now I have my first rough draft. Did you know that the New Year is one of the oldest holidays celebrated today? Surprisingly, in ancient Babylon, the New Year was first observed nearly 4,000 years ago. Around 2000 BC, this ancient New Year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. Now, After I have created my first rough draft, the next step would be to do the revision and editing process. Now keep in mind most of the editing will be done in the classroom as peer review editing time, where students will be held accountable for finding grammatical errors and spelling errors in each other's writing. However, the revision process, which would be adding sentence openers and dress-ups, most of that may need to be done at home. And always keep in mind that you are more than welcome to edit your students' final drafts before they submit it, just to ensure that no spelling errors or grammatical errors have been missed. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the revision process. So for revising each assignment will have a unique composition checklist. And the composition checklist will be emailed to you. So for this assignment, I would go back to my email and I would see, oh, Mrs. Skinner sent me a composition checklist. I would go ahead and open it up, and it says, Dear 8th grade students, here is the composition checklist for your celebration of the New Year assignment. Please remember to make a copy and fill it out completely before resubmitting it to me. So I would go ahead and I would open the checklist in Google Docs. Now, before I make any markings on this composition checklist, I need to do the following. I have to make a copy. So, no matter what the assignment, whenever you receive a composition checklist from me, you must make a copy. So you would go under File, you go under Make a Copy, and then you would rename your copy with your last name. So let's say last name Skinner _ composition checklist. Okay, and then you can go ahead and save it under a certain folder, or you can save it just on your Google Doc. For this purpose, I'm going to keep mine under the IEW Training folder, and I'm just going to press OK. So now my computer should automatically revert to having my composition checklist, the copy that I just made, open. Notice I know it's the copy because it's now titled with my last name. This is the copy you want to work from. Okay. So now that I have my composition checklist open, I can look through and see what I need for my final draft. So I see that my final draft must contain the structure. It must be an MLA format and it must be double-spaced. So if I go back to my rough draft, I can see that I've already done that. I have a header on the left-hand side. I have page number, and my essay is double-spaced. So I've already done my MLA format. I recommend keeping MLA format for your rough draft. That way you just get in the practice of using it for all of your writing assignments. And please keep in mind, I will be sending home a handbook at the beginning of the year, a hard copy that will contain examples of what MLA format should look at. So if you need a refresher, you can always refer to that. Okay, now that I have looked and I see I already have my structure, my essay is in MLA format and it is double-spaced, I now need to go ahead and work on the style of my essay. So it tells me that each paragraph should contain at least 2 dress-ups and 2 sentence openers. So examples of dress-ups that I can have in my essay are the following. I can have an ly adverb, a who-which clause, a strong verb, a quality adjective, or an Asia be clause, which would be examples such as when, where, while, as, if, although, or because. Notice that dress-ups must be in the middle of a sentence and they must be underlined. So I'm going to go back to my rough draft and I'm going to see where I could add some dress-ups. So, reading through, I have, did you know that the New Year is one of the oldest holidays celebrated today? I really like my first sentence because it provides a hook for my readers. It begins with a question and it really helps engage my readers. So I think I'm going to go ahead and leave that one alone. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at my second sentence. It says, surprisingly, in ancient Babylon, the New Year was first observed nearly 4,000 years ago. I might think to myself, observed. I think I can find a better word than observed. So let's say I go in my thesaurus and I find the word commemorated. I'm going to go ahead and insert that instead. So I'm going to add commemorated. Okay, commemorated, I would then go onto my composition checklist and note that that is a strong verb. I would go ahead and put an X on my strong verb. Now, notice I still need one more dress up. So let's go ahead and look at my third sentence. It says, around 2000 BC, this ancient new year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. I find that ancient is somewhat of a boring word. So let's say I want to go ahead and change that into a quality adjective. Same thing, I would go in my thesaurus, look up different synonyms for ancient. Let's say I want to do antiquated. I like the way that sounds. Around 2000 BC, this antiquated new year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. So I would go ahead and go back to my composition checklist and note I have a dress up. So now I have my two dress ups. Now I need to work on my two sentence openers. Notice that my sentence openers, I have choices I can use. I can have a subject opener, a prepositional phrase, an ly adverb, an ing phrase, or an A to B clause, and when, where, while, as, if, although, because. Keep in mind that each of the sentence openers and dress-ups, we will be going in detail on each of them and examples of each in class. So please don't worry if you don't understand what all of these are yet. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my rough draft and see where I can add some sentence openers. And I see a mistake here. In my original rough draft, this is what I had. So did you know that the New Year is one of the oldest holidays celebrated today? In ancient Babylon, the New Year was first commemorated nearly 4,000 years ago. Around 2000 BC, this antiquated New Year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. So like I said, I want to keep my first sentence because I really love that it's a big hook. But notice sentence 2. I find that that's somewhat of a surprising fact that it was first celebrated nearly 4,000 years ago. So one of my options is an ly adverb. So I might add in here, surprisingly, in ancient Babylon, the New Year was first commemorated nearly 4,000 years ago. Now, I need to remember how to identify my sentence opener. So I'm going to go back to my composition checklist and note that it's an ly adverb, surprisingly. And it is a number 3. So I'm going to go ahead and cross this off, go back to my rough draft, and in parentheses to the right, I'm going to add number 3. There I have my first sentence opener. Now I'm going to look at my next sentence. It says, around 2000 BC, this antiquated new year was identified at the sighting of the new moon and symbolized a season of rebirth and blossoming. I notice I already have a sentence opener in my third sentence, so all I need to do is identify it. Around is a preposition. So if I go back to my composition checklist, I see that I can identify a prepositional phrase with the number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that off, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to my rough draft and add the number 2. Okay. So now I have, as I can see on my composition checklist, I have my 2 dress-ups and my 2 sentence openers. And that was the requirements for this assignment. So I would go ahead, now I'm ready to submit my composition checklist and my final draft. So I would go ahead and I would press share. I would share it to Mrs. Skinner, which you will always send it to emerge.skinner@gmail.com. If you want to, you can add a note saying such as, hi Mrs. Skinner, here is the composition checklist for my celebration of the New Year assignment. Sincerely, Kate. Okay. Please note you don't need to add a note, but that is an option. The most important step is that you must change this little button to can comment. Then you would go ahead and press send. And you have now shared your composition checklist. Next, you need to go ahead and share your final draft. So you find your final draft, make sure it's in MLA format, you have your dress-ups, you have your sentence openers. You would, same thing, go ahead and press share. Share it to my email. Change this to can comment, add a note if you so desire, and press send. One thing about the notes, please make sure they are professional. You're beginning with a greeting and you are ending with a closing statement. Okay, so sincerely, or thank you, or blessings. Okay, they need to be professional. Okay, so that brings us through our IEW how to submit assignments. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into Fix-It Grammar. So why Fix-It Grammar? Why are we using this curriculum? So Fix-It Grammar provides students, you with the student, the opportunity to hunt for and correct errors in daily passages that cumulatively tell a story. So this curriculum really encourages you as the students to immediately apply new grammar knowledge in context, which helps aid in the transfer of these grammar skills into your very own writing. So for the process of Fix-It Grammar, each day you will be held responsible for editing a passage, which would be editing a sentence, which for the week would be one passage. So here's an example of what the workbook might look like for you. So it would say day 1. So on day 1, which you could do, let's say you did it on Wednesday after class, you would go ahead and go through and edit all the markings that you can find. And notice it tells you to be looking for vocabulary, which one note, we are not going to be doing the vocabulary aspect of Fix-It Grammar. We are actually going to be doing our vocabulary through our literature curriculum. So please, with the bolded words, please ignore. You don't need to type up your vocabulary words. We will be doing what's called a power word journal, and I will be addressing that in class. So the markings you need, though, you need to indent, you need capitals, you need to look for end marks, and then you should be identifying these parts of speech: articles, nouns, and who, which clause. These rules would be for the entire week. And as you notice in day 1 sentence, there is no who, which clause, so you will not be identifying that. So as a student in pencil, you would go through and find all the markings that you can find. Okay, and let's say these are the ones you found. You were able to indent, you capitalized in the olden days, capitalized in. You also noticed England needed to be capitalized along with King Henry because it's a proper noun. And also second because King Henry II was part of his title. And adding a period at the end of land. Then you would go ahead and identify your parts of speech. So the is an article, days, noun, England, noun, what we call proper noun, King Henry, also noun, second, also nouns because it's part of his title, the article, and land, noun. So once you as the student have marked all your markings in pencil, you would then hand that sentence for the day to a parent to go ahead and look over and see if there are any markings you've missed. Now, parent, this is when the teacher's manual becomes in handy. So I've asked you to purchase the teacher's manual because it really helps you to be able to explain to your student why he or she needs to make the markings. So let's say for this example, you forgot to indent. So as the parent, you would go ahead and in red pen, you would make the mark for indenting. And then you would go back to your student and explain to him or her why that marking needed to be there. And really, this is the most important aspect of this process, is helping your student understand why he or she missed that marking or why that marking needs to be there. Okay, you would go ahead and you would follow this process for all the sentences that week. Same thing, student, you would go ahead and do your markings in pencil, parent, edit in red pen, and then as the student, you are held responsible for going into a Google Doc and typing up the sentences correctly. So, same thing, you would go into your email, go into Drive, go into New, and then you would go into New Google Doc. And I already have one open. So same thing, you want to follow For your assignment name, it should be your last name underscore and then Fix-It Grammar with your level. So 6th grade is level 2, 7th grade is level 3, 8th grade is level 4. Make sure you have a header, so your first and last name, my name, course name, and then the date in this format. And you would go ahead and correctly type up your passages for that week. So this document, once you're done for the week, would contain, let's say this was your first week, so you would have 5 sentences on here, and then you would go ahead and submit it. So you have your sentences typed up properly, and parents, please make sure before your student submits this document that you look it over to ensure there are no spelling or grammatical errors, because this is the document that students will be graded on, and this is the document they will continue to add to each week. So let's say I finished week 1 and I'm ready to submit. I would go ahead and press share. Once again, add to Mrs. Skinner. Add a note if you would like, and please make sure once again it's on Can Comment. And then press send. So this document will be an ongoing document in the sense that students should only have one Fix-It Grammar document, and this will be the document that they add to each week. So they are progressively adding their sentences, and by the end of the school year they should have a whole story on here that will be double-spaced as well. So that's how to submit assignments using Fix-It Grammar. All right, so that wraps up the end of the presentation, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.